because there'll be something that shows up on the screen that says it's being recorded. So we're good to go. So we are at Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. Good morning, everybody. Live from upstate New York, somewhere between Buffalo and Rochester. We're going to learn today's Daf Lamed Aleph Bava. This is not really a traveling type of Daf, not even a Daf Yomi type of Daf, but we'll do our best. Shnei Kador. There were two people that had pots in their hand. They were walking one behind the other in Shusarab. The first one tripped and he fell. And that caused that the second fellow should trip over him. So Harishon Chayiv, the first one is Chayiv for this Sheni, because he was the one who caused the damage to the Sheni. Dr. the head of the Gemara. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, like Tema Masnis and Reb Mary. But we all remember that we had a machlokes a little while back between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. We actually had a Mishnah that talked about a similar case, and the Gemara ended up saying that there's actually two machlokes in this Mishnah between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, because there was a case discussed where someone dropped his cod and somebody else tripped and got hurt, and then the cod damaged, broken shard, someone got hurt with as well. So the Gemara ended up telling us there's two machlokes in here, either Meir and Reb Yehuda. The first machlokes is niskal poisheya or not. So do you say that if someone fumbles something, right? Remember, Reb Yehuda said lo shanu ela b'mischaven, and we said at the end it was he's mechaven to throw the pad down on the ground and purposely wanted to break it. But Shalayim was if he only fumbled, that's why the cod broke. Then in fact, that's called niskal, and it's not a pesheni, it would be chayiv. Reb Meir argued, and Reb Meir said, no, niskal is pesheni. Then there was a secondary machlokes. If somebody has a bar, this case his cod broken, there's pieces on the floor, and he's mafker it, does that absolve him from any chiyuv of bar? Because he was mafred, it doesn't belong to him anymore. So the Gemara ended up having a machlokes as Reb Yochanan and Belazar, whether or not, if you're mafker a bar, according to Reb Yehuda, you're free and clear. The machlokes is, are you only free and clear if when you originally dropped it, it was a mistake, or only if it's a pshia, only if you purposely dropped it? But regardless, there's a shita that holds, shita Reb Yehuda holds as well, that if you're mafker the bar, it's no longer yours, you're no longer responsible. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan over here says, Loi tema masnis in Reb Meir he. The Amar niskal posheya, who chayiv, don't say that the author of our Mishnah is Reb Meir, and niskal posheya is chayiv, and that's why the Rishon is chayiv to pay for the damages of a sheni, because the fact that he fumbled and he tripped is considered a pesheya, and it's mechayiv him. Rather, elafilu rabbanon the amri onusu, even according to the rabbanon, who say that niskal is an oinus, who potter, and he would normally be potter, so he's not responsible for the fact that he fumbled and tripped. Here, you know why he's chayiv for the damages of the second fellow? Hacha chayiv. It's speaking where he had the time. He had the time where he could have stood up and gotten out of the way. But he didn't. He decided he's going to sit there and relax on the floor rather than get up right away. And that's where his liability was created. So for the fact that he fell down, that we don't make him liable. He's considered an oinus. But the fact that he didn't mitigate it right away and get out of the way, that's what's generating his liability. So therefore, we're going to make a left and a right. So therefore, even the Rabbanon, who hold that the initial fall would not have been mechayiv him, the fact that he neglected to get up right away and move out of the way is mechayiv. We would be mechayiv him, even though niskal is laf poisheya, and even though he did not have the time to stand up. But you know what he could have done? Even if he didn't stand up, hoyaloi lahazir. He could have scramped out. I fell. Please stop. Don't bang into me. He could have warned the fellow behind him not to trip over it. Therefore, he's liable because he could have mitigated this damage to the second fellow, second potter who was behind him. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, if we say that there was not enough time for him to stand up, and because of that, we're not giving him any liability for the fact that he didn't stand up right away. Nevertheless, the also would not expect him in that short time, where he didn't even have time to stand up. In that time, he would not have been able to warn the guy behind him to turret. The guy just fell down. He's disoriented. He couldn't collect himself yet. We're not going to make him liable for the fact that he didn't warn. So therefore, the only way to understand that he should be chayiv is because he waited there for too long, and he spent too much time on the floor. But if he didn't have enough time, we could not make him liable, even for the fact that he didn't warn the fellow behind him. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, he couldn't have warned. So that's the machlokes between Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak and Rabbi Yochanan, in that Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak said, even though he can't stand up, he still could have warned, while Rabbi Yochanan said, no, he couldn't have warned, and therefore, if he was there a very short time and someone tripped over him, he in fact would not be chayiv. Okay, gewaltig. Zog the Gemara weiter. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah.
Yosy, I think you skipped the word. Which word? Targ. No?
Which word did I skip?
I'm looking inside the article. It says the targ because he was
preoccupied. It says.
I'm not sure where you are.
I mean,
before
maybe
I word before Tanan.
I've been following along in English, right?
So let me go back to Reb Nachman Yitzchak. So I'll start from Reb Nachman Yitzchak. Afilu Tema Lo Hayaloi Lamoid. Even if he didn't have time to stand up, he could still be liable because Hayaloi Lahazir V'Lahizer. Rabbi Yochanan said no. Given Lo Hayaloi Lamoid, Lo Hayaloi Lahazir to Torrid.
Right.
Okay, so that's what we'll be up to.
I don't think he said the targ. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Deterred because he is disoriented and he's not able to make that warning. Tanan we learned. So Dr. Mishnah. Tanan we learned. Haya bal koira risha. What if somebody was walking with a large beam on his shoulder, and behind him was a balachavis? So when a beam and a chavis and a jug meet, it's like rock, paper, scissors. And the scissors look out, but the rock is the inferior one. So if the chavis has a chance meeting with the kaira is going to win. So the halach is haya bal kaira rishon ubal habayis achrei. If the bal kaira was first and the bal chavis was last, so basically the guy's walking with a jug behind the beam. Nishbura hachavis b'kaira. What if the chavis banged into the kaira and broke? Potter, the bal kaira is potter because the bal kaira didn't do anything wrong. But the mamad, if the bal kaira stopped walking in the rishus harabim, you have to move, and stopping is something that's not supposed to be done when you're walking in rishus harabim. So therefore, if the bal kaira stopped, which means he did something that was out of the ordinary, then bal kaira chayiv. Then the bal kaira would have to pay for the broken pot, because it's not like he has brake lights that notifies the guy behind him that he's slowing down. If he suddenly stops, the bal hachavish doesn't realize that, and he'll walk right into him and break it. My love, let's suggest sha'amid lakatev. Now lakatev, Rashi says, is to readjust his load. Now that is something that is very normal to do. Even when you're walking in Rishus Harabim, it's a normal thing from time to time to stop for a second to readjust your load. And if it's Amid Lakatev, meaning he didn't do anything out of ordinary, the Orchehu, the Katani Chayiv. And it still says you're Chayiv. Why? He didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Why would he be Chayiv? It must be The Hava Leila Hazard. It must be that even though he didn't do anything out of the ordinary, he should have warned. So Oibazoi, let's ask Akasha on Rabbi Yochanan, who said, since he didn't have enough time to stand up, and whatever he's doing, his actions are perfectly normal, that he's still on the floor, he has no obligation to warn anybody behind him. Well, if someone stops Lakate, if he's also doing something that's routine, that's normal, that's something that the Balachava should be always aware of, and he shouldn't be chayiv. But from the Bryce, you see that he is chayiv because he didn't warn. That's not the case with the Balachayr is chayiv. The Balachayr is chayiv kisha amid lofish, where he stopped to rest. That's for an extended period of time. That's Mishunahu Zakrashi, the Ain Rishus Arab Masuyilakach. The Rishus Arab is not made to rest. And therefore he's chayiv. Avul Amid Lakatev, but if he stopped for a reasonable reason, and that was to readjust his load, what is the halacha, Rabbi Yochanan? Potter? It will be potter, even though he didn't warn the fellow behind him. If that's the case, at the Tani Seifa, the Seifa of this very Mishnah was looking for a case where the Balkar would be potter. And what did the Seifa say? If he warned the Balachavis and told him, stop, potter. Why do you need such a case to find his potter? Lift like Velisna B'didah. We could have even had a case where he'll be potter, where he didn't warn the guy behind him. Where do we say that the Baal Hakar is chayiv? If he stopped for not a good reason, to rest. Avul Amid Lakate, potter, because you, Rabbi Yochanan, say that if he stops for a normal reason, he doesn't have to warn the guy behind him. Why did the Mishnah have to reach out so far to a case where the Baal HaKara warned the Baal HaChavis to find the case of Tur? We could even find the case of Tur when there was no warning, according to you, Rabbi Yochanan, and that is if he stopped for a good reason. Rabbi Yochanan, no. In fact, it's speaking about Emid Lafush. And you want to know why the Mishnah reached out to such a far case where there was a warning? Because there's a very big chiddush in that halacha. Hakamash Malon, Dafagad Omid Lafush, Kika Amrloi Labalabayis Amoid, Potter. It's a huge chiddush. I stopped illegally. I had no right to stop. So you should think that no matter what, I'll be chayiv. Kamash Malon, that even if you stopped unlawfully, if you warned the fellow behind you, that will mitigate loss and that will potter you from damages. That's a very important chiddush that the Tana wants to tell us. But of course, Dr. Yochanan, if he stopped for a legitimate reason, like Lakatef, even if he didn't warn the fellow behind him, he will still be potter. About Toshma, the Gemara is going to ask another kasha on Rabbi Yochanan and resolve it in the same way that it resolved this last kasha. Hakadorim vazagogin, people who make jugs and glass. One was walking behind the other. Niskal Harishon, the first fellow, fumbled and tripped, Vinofal, and he fell. And then Viniskal Hasheni Barishon, and the second person tripped over the first fellow. Vashlishi Bisheni. So we have literally a chain reaction over here. Rishon Chayiv in this case Sheni. The first person will be Chayiv for the damage that happened to the second person. Bisheni Chayiv in this case Shlishi. And the Sheni will be Chayiv for the damage done to the third person. So each person is liable for the damages caused by the fact that he tripped and fell on the floor. The imach must reach enough. What if they all tripped over the first? Liable to pay for the damage. To everybody, however, but if they warn each other, lights, Keturin, then they'll be potter. So Zok Gemara, my love, let's suggest Shaloi Hayahen. Why are they potter? Because let's say they're potter, even if they were not able to stand up. If they were not able to stand up, they couldn't have rectified. They're still only going to be potter if they warn each other. And once again, it's shver on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan holds that if they couldn't have stood up, even if they didn't warn, he's going to be potter. So had the time and even if they had the time to stand up and they didn't, even if they had the time to stand up and they didn't stand up, they're still going to be potter. Avo, I'm sorry. If they had, Rebecca will learn that they had time to stand up, but even though they had to have time to stand up, if they gave notification to the fellow behind them, they'll be potter. If they didn't have time to stand up, my potter, you Rabbi Yochanan hold, he would be potter even without a warning. If that's the case, at the Tani Seifa, when the Seifa of this price is looking for a case where it's going to be potter, once again, they had to reach out to a far case. In Misiru Zeazeh potter, we could have had a case even without a warning that it would have been potter. Where do you say they're chayiv? Only if they had a time to get up and get out of the way. If they didn't have the time to get up and out of the way, Petur and their potter. That's what it should have said according to Rabbi Yochanan. Why would it pick a case of Hisiru to find the case of Petur? Even without Hisiru, if it was a shorter time and they didn't have time to stand up, it would be potter. Zok to Gemara, Hakamash Malon, the apple gab the Hoyalin Lamli, even though they could have gotten out of the way and mitigated this mess. Nevertheless, the same chiddush. The chiddush of the Mishnah is beautiful. You might think that if I could have gotten out of the way, there's no way for me to shed that liability. Zoktim the Mishnah, even if you could have gotten out of the way, you're responsible to your liability. Beautiful. Now we're going to get into something that I believe is a little bit complicated, but could be it's only complicated because I was tired when I prepared it, and now I'm not tired anymore. So maybe it won't be hard at all. So let's start. Amar Rava, if you look at the big Tosfos and an equally big Rashi on the same sugya on Amid Beis, then you'll see why it could have been a little bit complicated. But I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. Amar Rava, Rishon Chayiv. This chain reactor. Number one fell on there. So recent high in this case, and what this means is the Rishon is chayiv to pay any damage that was done to the Sheni, whether or not the Sheni tripped over the Rishon, so it's the Rishon's kuf that caused the damage, or if it's his jug that broke and that caused the damage. Either way, the Rishon will be chayiv. So before we get into the
yes, we don't have a very good connection.
We don't have, we lost them also.
Oh well. The wrong left. The wrong left.
This setup was important to get it on YouTube, right? So,
Yeah.
so it's not, he can't do it at 9 o'clock. He's not able to do it. It has to be done. I don't know.
No, it's too late. Yeah, we completely
I just got logged in. I'm not in. I'm in the rural area. I'm on the 63, so I probably lost my internet. But we're back on.
Yeah, now we're back on. So you think you should go back to the beginning because we completely lost you.
Okay, so please tell me
Well, right after you said it was
where I dropped off.
right after you said that.
Right after I said what?
Right after you said you'll make it as simple as possible. That's as simple as it got.
Oh, that was very
Okay.
That was very simple.
So we're going to talk now about 4 different cases. This guy fell down and his jug broke. So two things could have happened. One of four things could have happened. A person could have tripped over the guy, and now it's an Adam damaging an Adam. The person's kalim could have broke on me, so now it's an Adam damaging kalim. The second set of things that could have happened is a person could have tripped over my kalim and gotten hurt, or the kalim could have been damaged by my kalim. So that's why there's four cases. There's Adam Hamazik Adam, Adam Hamazik Kalim, then there's Kalim Hamazik Adam, and Kalim Hamazik Kalim. So right off the bat, if it's Adam Hamazik, you're Chayiv Sion damaging a person, Sion damaging Kalim. But if you have Kalim that are doing Mazik, well, if Kalim are a bar, if they classify as a bar, and whether or not the Kalim would classify as a bar would depend on the machlokes we had, whether the kalim are only a bar if you were mafka them or not. Rav said it's only if you're mafka them, and Shmuel said even if you're not mafka them. But if it is a bar, so bar you're chayiv on this adam, but you're not chayiv on this kalim, because if a kalim get broken in a bar, most of the tanoim hold you don't have to pay. That's the four variables we're dealing with. So let's see Amarova. Rishon chayiv b'niskei sheni. The first person who tripped is chayiv to pay any damages to the second guy. It doesn't matter whether it was the second guy's guf or whether it was the second guy's kalim. Ben b'niskei gufay, ben b'niskei mamoinoi. It doesn't matter if I damaged with my guf or if the damage that I did was caused by my broken kalim. The first person, he's fully liable for any damage that his guf does, and he's fully liable for any damage that his kalim do. But Sheni, the second guy, chayiv b'niskei shlishi b'niskei gufay. Anything that he damaged the third guy with his own body, that's where he'll be chayiv no matter what. If the third guy didn't trip over the second guy, but he tripped over the second guy's kalim, the second guy's bar, then he will be potter. So, Frank the Gemara, why should there be a difference between the liability of the first guy and the liability of the second guy? If you're going to tell me that if you trip over somebody, you're considered a posheya, if that's your shita, meaning if you hold like a mayor, well then sheni nami l'chayiv. The second fellow tripping over the first fellow is just as chayiv because he's the same posheya. So their halacha should be exactly the same. Iniska posheyahu. If you hold niskal laf posheya, well then the first person as well wasn't posheya. Afilu rishon nami lifter. The first person should be potter as well. Now let's just get clear. What should he be potter on? He's not going to be potter if someone trips over him. Because adam amazik, you're always chayiv. But if niskal is laf posheya, then he shouldn't be liable for damage that is caused by his keli. Because even though his keli broke and now is a hazard, but he's mafker it right away because it's a broken shard. We assume he's mafker it right away. A and B is it fell through a non-pshia. If you hold niskalaf pashaya, so the question is, why would you say that the rishon is chayiv? If you hold niskalaf pashaya, why do you say the rishon will be chayiv? If his kalim caused damage, the kalim were niskalaf pashaya, which means they fell on the floor and broke through an oinis, and they have to right away because who keeps his broken shards? And we learned if you're mafker a bar, and the bar only got there because of an oinis, you don't have to pay. So that is the question over here. How can we make a distinction between the first guy and the second guy? Niskal is pesheya, that should both be chayiv for the nezek caused by their kalim, and if niskal is la pesheya, they should both be potter for damages done by their kalim. Zok to Gemara. Let's turn on to Amid Beis. Did the daf change by you?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Zakmar Rishon Vadai Pashay. Are you good? So Zakmar Rishon Vadai Pashay. we're not going to say that the Rishon and the Sheni are exactly alike. In fact, there's a difference. The Rishon is worse than the Sheni. The Rishon started this chain reaction. He's for sure a Pesheya. He's for sure going to be Chayiv, and therefore he'll be Chayiv not only for damage that he causes, but he'll also be Chayiv for damages that his Keli causes, because we consider that Pesheya, and therefore he's Chayiv al Tzipor, he's Chayiv for his Kalim, for the damage that his Kalim do. But Sheni, Agufa Mechayiv, the Hava Loilamoid V'Loyamad. The Sheni, we don't consider him a Niskal Pesheya. Niskal Pesheya is when you on your own fumble. If you trip over somebody else that fell in front of you, we will not consider that a Niskal. That's even less than a Niskal. And therefore, damages that his Kuf does, he's Chayiv for, because the other Mazik, you're always Chayiv. He should have gotten out of the way. The third guy tripped over his broken jug. There is really Potter. You know why he'll be Potter? The Amarle, the second fellow will tell the third fellow, Hi Bira, this bar, meaning the broken jug on the floor here, Lava Nakarite. I didn't dig this bar, meaning I'm not responsible for it, because this is not even the case of this guy. I'm an Oinus here. And since I'm an Oinus, this is not my bar. I feel bad that you tripped, but it's not my bar. I'm not liable. Now we're going to ask a kasha on Rava's halach. So Rava made a distinction between the first guy and the second guy. The first guy is considered a pesheya, and therefore he's chayiv both for the damage that he did personally and the damage that his kalim caused. While the second fellow, although he's responsible for the damage that his body caused, he's not responsible for the damage that his kalim caused, because he can say, I didn't dig this bar. So referring to Gemara. Kulon chayovin on this kegufan. We have another brayso that says everybody in this chain reaction are chayiv for the damage done by their guf. Upeturin on this kememoina. But everybody's also potter on the damage that their mom did. So this is going to be very schwer on Rava, because Rava said that the first guy is chayiv on the damage that his mom did. My afil rishon. When the brayso says kulon Peturin on this Kulon should include everybody, including the first guy, which is schwer on Rava, because Rava said the first guy is chayiv for the damages that his kalim caused. So no, Rava will learn the brayso when it says Kulon, doesn't really mean Kulon. It means Kulon except for the first guy. Loi levam rishon. Frank Gemara, how could you say that? It says kulon. Kulon means kulon hanizokin. All of damage that their person does, but not for damage that their kalim does. The first guy is not a victim. The second guy and on are victims. We're only talking about the victims, and it's the victims that are putter for damage done by their kalim. This is not a good teretz. This is not a good teretz to explain Rava. Why? If you're going to say afilu rishon it means even the first fellow is potter for the done caused by his kalim. Because kulon means everybody. Everybody. If the brayso is excluding the first guy, and the first guy is going to be chayiv for niskei mamaynon, like Rava wants to argue, then the Mishnah shouldn't have used the word kulon. My kulon, listening hanazokin. What the brayso should have said is something more clear. All of the victims, they're going to be potter for niskei mamaynon. When you say kulon, it seems to include even the first guy, and therefore the brayso is saying that even the first guy is not responsible for damage done by his kalim. Yet Rava says that the first guy is liable for damage done by his kalim. Zok to Gemara, Ela Omar Rava, we have to change around what Rava said. Until now, Rava was talking about damage done by your body or damage done by your kalim. Now we're changing what Rava said. Rava talking only about damage that was done by your body. Ela Omar Rava, Rishon Chayiv Vein beniske gufay desheni, vein beniske mamayne desheni. What Rava was talking about when he said beniske mamayne niske gufay wasn't talking about whether his guf did damage or whether his mama did damage. But Rava is saying is you're chayiv to pay whether the victim's guf was damaged or whether the victim's mammon was damaged. So now let's see how the chips fall now that Rava said it differently. The first fellow is chayiv to pay both for damage done to the guf of the sheni, both for damage done to the mammon of the sheni. The sheni chayiv, but the second guy is chayiv b'niskei shlishi b'niskei gufay. The second guy is only chayiv for damage done to the guf of the shlishi, but not for damage done to the mammon of the sheni. My time up the havalei bar. The whole reason why he's potter for the mammon of the sheni is because it's his kalim that are a bar, and his kalim damage Yenim's kalim. A bar is never chayiv to pay for damages to someone's kalim. Bar shechayiv boyas kalim. You don't find bar who's chayiv al kalim. Now, I have to take a step back. I'm mistaken in saying that we're discussing someone's kalim damaging. It's not someone's kalim. We're talking only about the guf. So we're only talking about the guf of the person. So Reuven damaged Shimon, and Reuven damaged Shimon's kalim. Shimon damaged Levi, and Shimon damaged Levi's kalim. Rava says that the first fellow is chayiv both for the damages done to the guf of Shimon and both damages done to the kalim of Shimon, while the second guy is not chayiv. So let's think about this. The sheni chayiv b'niskei shlishi b'gufa b'niskei gufa v'lei b'niskei moini my timer tavalei bar v'lei mitinu bar shechayiv bois kalim. The second guy, what we're saying here is not Adam HaMazik. Since he fell down and it wasn't his fault, we don't consider him an Adam HaMazik at all. We just look at him like a regular bar. A regular bar is chayiv if he damages a person. If a person gets hurt in a bar, the owner of the bar has to pay. So this guy who fell, Shimon, he's now considered a bar. So if someone trips over him, he has to pay. But if kalim get damaged by him, we know you don't pay for this kalim bar. Mashaying the first guy, Ibalti's a Pesheya, we consider him an Abdam Amazik. Therefore, he's chayiv even on this kalim. Zok Gemara, Hanichal Shmuel, Damar Kolta Kalabaru. This fits in very well according to Shmuel, who holds that if you own something, even if you weren't mafker it, it's still considered bar and not Adam Amazik. So therefore, even if you're going to be mafker your kalim if they break, but if you fall on the floor, you're not being mafker yourself. So unless you hold that even non-hefker, even an item that belongs to you, can be considered a bar, this guy can't be a bar. So we're saying that the second guy is not considered an Adam HaMazik. He's only considered a bar. That only fits in according to Shmuel, who holds that you could be a bar even though you're not hefker. Because surely a person is not mafker himself. Elul Rav the Amar after in you loy. But according to Rav, who holds that you're not a bar. You're not a bar if you're not hefker. And a person for sure is not hefker. So he can't be a bar. So he's always an Adam HaMazik. So he should be mechuyev to pay for damage to Levi's kalim, Michael and Maimar. So because of that, we're completely aborting this svara, and we're going back to our original pshat. And we're discussing damage done by my body versus damage done by my. The that Rava made is the first guy, Reuven. He's mechuyev to pay sai for damage done by his body and sai for damage done by his kalim. The second guy is only mechuyev to pay for damage done by his body, but he's not mechuyev to pay for damage done by his kalim. With the kashalach kulan chayavin. The problem is we had a kasha from the brisa. The brisa says kulan chayavin on this gufan and kulan peturin on this kimamayna. So how are you going to explain that? Because Rava says that the first guy is partner on this kimamayna. Tirgama Rabada Bar Minyumi Kamed Ravina Shahusku Kalim Bekalim. So when the Brisa says that everybody's potter on the nezek caused by the kalim, that means if the kalim damaged kalim, and everybody agrees that if kalim damaged kalim, the kalim are a bar, and kalim don't have to pay for damages done to kalim. A bar doesn't pay for damages done to kalim. So in essence, we have three categories. If damage was done by the person, it doesn't matter if it's the first guy or the second guy, they're chayav for all damage, whether it was done to kalim, whether it was done to adam. Because if the damage was done by the person himself, it's adam amazik. Adam amazik is chayav for any type of damage, whether he damaged an adam or he damaged kalim. But if your kalim damaged, well, then it depends. The first guy will be chayiv. Now, if the kalim damaged a person, it depends. The first guy who was a niskal posheya, so he's liable for the bar that he made, and the bar that damages a person, avada is chayiv. So too, the Shimon, he was not a niskal. We said that the first guy, he's a niskal posheya. So his kalim will become a bar, and therefore, if they damage a person, he'll be chayav for them. Shimon, who's not a niskal, so his kalim didn't become a bar. So if his kalim didn't become a bar, then he's talking on mechuyev for any damages that his kalim does. But kalim, the damaged kalim, what if my kalim broke and my kalim broke someone else's kalim? Well, there everything will be potter. Even Reuven will be potter, because even if you're going to classify Reuven's broken shards as his bar, we all know that if kalim get damaged in a bar, the bala bar is not chayiv. So at the end of the day, we have three levels. Adam amazik, if someone slipped over the person, no matter if he was Reuven or Shimon, whether he's the first guy to fall or the second guy to fall, they're both liable for any damages done by their body. That's Adam amazik. If it's their kalim that the damage, well, then it depends. Do these kalim have a classification of bar or not? If you hold niskal posheya, then it has a classification of a bar. So the first guy who was a niskal posheya, his kalim became a bar. The baal his kalim became a bar. If a person got damaged in his kalim, the baal bar has to pay for the person. But if kalim got damaged by his kalim, he's putter, because bar is not liable for any payment for kalim. But if he's the second guy, where it's not even a bar, because he wasn't a posheya, then he'll be putter for any damages done by his kalim, whether it was a person that got damaged or whether it was kalim that got damaged. Gewaltig. Amar Mar, Zok Mar, in Machmas Rishon Naflu, the Brisa goes on. What if they were all victims of the first guy? Then Chayiv b'niskei kulam, then he's Chayiv b'niskei kulam. Frek Gemara, I don't understand. If they're walking in a row and Reuven falls and Shimon falls behind him, so Levi's not going to bump into Reuven. Levi's going to bump into Shimon. How is it possible that everybody bumped into Reuven? Zok the Gemara, how did they fall? He fell across the road and he was blocking the road. He was virtually intersecting the road, perpendicular to the road. So therefore, anybody coming after them is going to trip over him. No, he's not perpendicular to the road. He's at a 45-degree angle. What is the difference? Tosfos says something very interesting. Tosfos is a huge difference. So let's look at Tosfos. Zok Tosfos, Rav Papa is arguing on Rav Papa, who said that he's intersecting the road perpendicular. If he was perpendicular to the road, in fact, he wouldn't be chayiv. The first guy would not be responsible for damages to the third guy. You know why? If you see a guy, he's on the floor, and you see another guy's on the floor, there's an obstacle here. You should have stopped. However, this guy's at a 45, maybe it's very possible that the first guy that tripped, Shimon, maybe if tripped on one side of him, which was further down the road, because he's on the diagonal. So when he got, and he's coming on the other side of the road, where the obstacle is closer to him, he couldn't have seen it because the other guy's too far away. and therefore, there's a chiyuv. They're the Rishon's chiyuv for everybody because since he's lying on the road in such a way where one by one people are tripping over him, they couldn't tell from the people who tripped, and will be Mamshach Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. I'm hoping tomorrow to be there in person. A little tired, but there. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shmiel, for turning on the video. Amen. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.